Making informed split-second decisions are an everyday occurrence for anybody that's deploying out there as a law enforcement officer. When we plug in the Dejero capability, now you have multiple lines of communication, multiple lifelines that keep that constant information flow going, to keep that officer, that agent that is responsible for making those split-second decisions informed.
Hello, my name is Cuervo. Welcome to Critical Connections, a podcast that features the stories of the people and companies helping to make our communities connected, informed, and safe. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, these kinds of harrowing stories often dominate the news. Groups of people making dangerous journeys, risking everything to cross borders in search of a better life. Mass migration is a complex issue, and according to the United Nations, one that is only expected to grow. For those working on the front lines in Border Patrol, the challenges are also complex. Few resources, a lack of innovation, relying on radio communication, congested networks, and unreliable connectivity. All of these factors can lead to unpredictable, even dangerous operations when border officials are working diligently to ensure safety for all. Joining me today is one of the leading experts in global border security, David Aguilar. His impressive career spanned 35 years with the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, where he served as both the acting and deputy commissioner. He also worked as the national chief of the United States Border Patrol. He's now chief executive officer at DVA Group, where he specializes in homeland security strategy and leadership. Welcome, David.
Great to be with you, Evie. Looking forward to a great discussion.
Me too. Also joining me is a familiar face with Dejero, Jehan Karim. He's our Global Director of Business Development and knower of it all when it comes to Dejero Smart Blending Technology. He works with public safety agencies around the world to deliver safer and more effective mission operations and outcomes. Welcome, Jehan.
Thanks for having me, Evie. I'm excited about this conversation with yourself and Chief. Looking forward to it.
Let's start first off with David, someone with an extensive experience in border law enforcement. Unpack some of the biggest challenges facing the sector today.
I would start with the vastness of the border that we have. We're very fortunate as a country to be as large as we are, to have the environments in which we live. But one thing we have to keep in mind is that our borders delineate not only our country, but our way of life. So therefore, protecting that country, protecting our way of life is absolutely essential. Now, what does a border translate to? On the southern border with our partner Mexico, it's 2,000 miles of border. By the way, in Texas, takes in about half of that border with Mexico. It's very rough in areas, very desolate, very rural and remote. Unforgiving, and we'll touch a little bit about that here in just a few minutes, but unforgiving in the sense that it is a harsh environment. And because it is harsh, it is rural, it is remote, and this is where connectivity, the ability for our agents to deploy and to be connected on a constant basis, is critically important.
David, what would be some of the things that people perhaps would be surprised to hear that are challenges that Border Patrol agents face day to day?
Well, there's several, but probably one of the most prominent ones is the harsh environments in which they deploy. Dehydration, for example, is one of the things that they face on a literally on a daily basis, especially during the summer months. But let me give you an example. Last year, there was over 7,000 responses to search and rescue requests, over 22,000 people that were rescued by the United States Border Patrol. During those rescues, because of the harshness of the environment, the heat and so forth, we've actually had agents that have fallen due to dehydration. We have actually, unfortunately, lost agents that have died due to dehydration, along with some of the people that they were attempting to rescue. So very, very harsh environments that they deploy in.
So in these types of scenarios, connectivity is almost like a lifeline for these agents.
It is an absolute lifeline. It is an absolute requirement. It is something that, from deploying from a knowledge-based and informed position, is critically important. And even after and during the response, Border Patrol, for example, has a BORSTAR unit, Border Patrol Search, Trauma, and Rescue Unit, that connectivity with doctors back at the hospitals is critically important, either to give the rescue to the people that they are saving, or in some cases to fellow agents that have fallen because of dehydration.
Someone you've worked with, Congressman Will Hurd, recently said that Border Patrol agents are often being asked to pursue individuals that are better financed, have better tech than the agents themselves. That has to be frustrating and at times disappointing too. What are your thoughts?
Frustrating and very challenging for our people, for our officers, for the families that know that our agents are deploying into these environments. Yes, the cartels are criminal organizations that are much better equipped at times than we are. They are better financed, and they don't have the constraints of government. Where when I was in service, I used to call our rate of acquisition, rate of procurement, uh, slothish, because it didn't come fast enough. Now, that's not anybody's fault other than the way that our governments are built. They're not built to basically move forward as quickly as we need to respond with the requirements that we have. We continue today to basically face, of course, human trafficking, illegal entry into the United States by people wanting to come into the country for economic reasons, some fleeing criminal prosecution, some fleeing political persecution. So it's a vast array and mix of people that we encounter. That is what we hear about most here in the US relative to the border. But it would be irresponsible for people like myself, and I know the congressman was always talking about this, the other things that we face, the other things, narcotics, criminal organizations trying to take advantage of our cross border activities, the smuggling of weapons in both directions, in and out of the United States, the smuggling of bulk cash, the smuggling of people to exploit them. So it's all of these threats and vulnerabilities that come into account when we're talking about protecting our nation's borders.
It's so interesting because despite all of the advances in technology, what I'm hearing from you is that there's still this disconnect between, the lack of innovation and how quickly it's adopted by public safe agencies. Why do you think that is?
When I entered on duty a long time ago as a young Border Patrol, I was 22 years of age, 1978. Now I'm aging myself. Uh, we continue to actually have some of the same problems today, believe it or not, than back then. We had back then when we used to call dead areas, dead spots. We still have those dead spots. Now, back then, the technology didn't exist. It exists today. Dejero is a big piece of that. Is when our agents deploy into some of these areas known as, for example, El Camino del Diablo. Translated, it means the Devil's Highway in the West Desert of Arizona. These are areas that are desolate, harsh, and require our agents to deploy either for an enforcement perspective or search and rescue, first responder perspective. But they do so in some of these areas still without that communication. Placing a Dejero type capability into those areas will give that persistent connectivity, give that continuity of connection that includes not only video streaming, data streaming, and that vital communications. Connectivity, communications is the lifeline for our agents deploying in some of these areas.
Let me pick on that a little bit. So we're starting to get into connectivity now as sort of the empowerment of many technology tools. I'm going to bring in Jehan. Jehan, take us through it. I mean, maybe we need to zoom out a bit to really talk about the Dejero Smart Blending technology, which is really what allows for this optimal connectivity in areas like El Camino del Diablo.
Yeah, thanks, Evie, and appreciate the thoughts there, Chief. I think from smart blending technology, as Chief mentioned, right, we're enabling key aspects of operational technological environments that rely on very mission critical data transfer, right? And our ability as Dejero and our ability as a technology partner for our government partners is to be able to take out the guessing factor from the operational environment. A lot of the times when we work with our customers, they talk about pre-planning, mitigating any of the risks, vetting out the threat vectors and all of that operational jargon when they're talking about these environments. I think being able to utilize Dejero's ability to be network agnostic and provider agnostic and technology agnostic is a huge force multiplier for our government partners, because they can go into an area of responsibility and operational environment and not have to worry about the fact that, hey, is this particular connectivity going to work for me in this environment? They can have the assurance that our platform will tap into as many available transports as possible, regardless of it being cellular or SATCOM or MANET or microwave, any types of IP capabilities. As you said, there's tons of innovation in that space. Our platform makes all of that agnostic and very simple and usable for the operator, who at that moment in time has to be focused on the mission, right? And our goal is to make sure that we move their focus to the mission so they can do what they do best, is the job at hand.
Let me pull that thread a little bit more, and just if you could explain it even further. So when you hear Dejero Smart Blend technology, describe what exactly happens.
Dejero's approach to multi-network, let's just say routing or multi-network management, is kind of developed at the edge and now focusing at the core, where traditionally large enterprise, as anybody would, starts at the center and builds out. What Dejero has done has really become the expert at the edge, and then is moving all of that data traffic into the enterprise, whether that be to the cloud or the data center. But because Dejero was kind of germinated at the edge, we are very intimately familiar with the factors that impact any network's performance at any day and time, time of day or any location in the world. And the types of metrics that we look at, whether that be a network's latency, a network's bandwidth, a network's availability, a network's ability to transmit packets reliably. There's a term called forward error correction. There's a term called, packet re-requests. There's a whole bunch of technological magic, but essentially what we're doing is making sure that that critical packet of information that needs to get from the operator to another operator or to the command center or to the control post gets there, because we know there is a life between shoot and don't shoot. Those packets are very critical, and it's very important to have that level of reliability and fidelity built into our system. So our ability to in real time look at the available networks and look at the demands of packet traffic and really coalesce an environment where we can optimize that is our secret sauce, is what we call smart blending technology.
So this algorithm is essentially blending all of these networks, taking the best of them, and then delivering it as it's needed wherever it is in the world. Jehan, you've worked with a lot of these public safety agencies who are doing some really not just important work, but many people don't really understand and grasp sort of the severity and how it keeps them safe in return. What are you hearing? What's the feedback for those who have adopted smart blending technology?
I think it's, I'll speak for myself, I'll speak for my team, and I'll speak for Dejero. I think for me personally, it's very gratifying, right? We kind of get to see the impact of our technology on a very immediate basis, right? Whether that be in a law enforcement space, whether that be in a fire protection space, whether that be at a state and local level in a small community, whether that be at a massive state like California where we're deployed for 911 systems, or whether that be globally where we're deployed with our defense partners or enterprise partners. I think for someone to have that peace of mind that their operation is going to have that much more resiliency, that much more reliability because they've trusted in Dejero's technology, it gives us a sense of pride. It gives us a sense of responsibility, but it's also very gratifying to know that we are, working towards a purpose, and that purpose is very meaningful. But at the same time, from a personal experience, I could tell you numerous amount of times, because of the fact that we're working in these circles, we've had people tell us that it was a life or death situation, right? And if they did not have access to these technological capabilities, Dejero being one of them, right, it would not be possible for them to conduct their mission the way they wanted it, and the outcomes that we all desire to have is not just the protection of life and property from a citizen perspective, but from the men and women in uniform that are actually on the front lines. Or we want to ensure that we're giving everybody the best shot at the best outcomes.
Making informed split second decisions are an everyday occurrence for anybody that's deploying out there as a law enforcement officer. The law enforcement officers deploying within an urban area of an environment is fortunate because they've got connectivity, they've got their iPhones, they've got the land mobile radios and so forth. You now take a requirement to deploy into a rural or remote area of operation desolate, a land mobile radio, for example. If it's not working, that's it. We're dead in the water. We're not able to communicate. We're not able to make the informed decisions because we're not seeing the big picture because of lack of connectivity. When we plug in the Dejero capability, now you have multiple lines of communication, multiple lifelines that keep that constant information flow going, to keep that officer, that agent that is responsible for making those split second decisions informed, so that that response that I talked about can be done safely, can be done efficiently as possible, and as effective as possible, not only for the agent, but for the individuals he or she is dealing with.
We know, though, that this is a powerful tool, and yet, budget constraints often are what limits agencies perhaps from fully adopting it. So how do you make then the case to buy it or to make that part of their workflows? How do you do that?
Educate, inform, impress the value of that is brought to that ground pounder individual that's out in the field in the middle of nowhere making those split second decisions. Let me give you an example, and Jehan is familiar with this situation. Unfortunately and tragically, November of 2022, we had an Air and Marine officer deploying on a boat over in Cabo Rojo in Puerto Rico, basically making an approach to a couple of vehicles, boats that had been spotted. They responded. Unfortunately, there was an exchange of gunfire. One of the bad guys was killed. Unfortunately, three of our officers were shot. One of them basically died as a result of the shooting a day later. During everything that was happening, the connectivity was not what it should have been. Fortunately, they were able to get through. But as a result of that, areas such as those desolate areas out in the middle of the water are now being covered by Dejero type situations. So unfortunately, sometimes it takes tragic situations. Well, one of the things, for example, that is now very popular within law enforcement in general, but the Border Patrol and OFO and Air and Marine are now also involved in this, is body-worn cameras. Body-worn cameras require that connectivity in order to get that backhaul in real time to do the assessment evaluation to inform that officer to make the best decision possible. Dejero provides that backhaul capability in areas where in the past that couldn't be done.
We've talked about mass migration, but there is human trafficking, smuggling of illicit goods, narcotics, weapons. What are some of the opportunities that the two of you see when it comes to security and technology?
Right now, the lack of backhaul capability takes a tool that is tremendously valuable to the operator and contains it to an area that it may not be enough to create that situational awareness, that common operating picture. By amplifying each one of these through the use of Dejero, daisy chaining and backhauling and everything else, now we're going to have a broader scope of the environment, of the field operations, the requirements, the intrusions, the threats, the vulnerabilities that are occurring, that are giving our organization and our people a better means to respond. So it's the amplification and enhancement of the technology reach in some of these areas that in the past we've been blind at.
The industry is talking about AI, and they're talking about edge processing, and they're talking about large language models, and they're talking about all of this new technology. And you started off with talking about all of this innovation and technology. And there's almost kind of the flip side of technological innovation is operator innovation, right? The operators will always innovate a way to address their problem. It may not be the most technologically advanced way, but it damn sure will be a very innovative way to solve their problem. And I think there's opportunities for Dejero to kind of create a path where these very smart men and women that are at the front lines, that are doing their jobs and being very innovative and creative in their approach, can get access to technologies like Dejero Smart Blending Platform, and it creates a level playing field almost for them, right? It's like we all know spots in our house where the Wi-Fi is great, where you take video calls, and we know spots in our house where the Wi-Fi isn't great, right? But if you had to take a video call in a part of your house where you have to look the best on the call, and it's a very high impact call, you make sure that you have the best network connectivity because this call is very critical. It's kind of a very mundane example, but it's very relevant because these operators and the frontline folks are being said, hey, you need to be able to conduct your job XYZ or this task, national security, whether you're in San Diego or Puerto Rico or Japan or Germany or Middle East. And guess what? The outcome desired is the same, right? But the environment is drastically different, right? Dejero is that equalizer that can be brought in to say, hey, we're at least making the network playing field level, right? We're giving you the best chance at being able to share this information, access this information, and most importantly, conduct your job in a way that is the safest way possible.
Yeah, and even now we're in 3 different cities. In North America, our internet connectivity is completely different, even though we're in major cities. I mean, this is a very simplified example, but it sort of illustrates the point. I want to ask you a question, though. We've talked a lot about different scenarios and obviously the challenges, but what does success look like for you? And I think you both have such different perspectives. But let's start with you first, David.
The greatest success is having our agents, our men and women that deploy out there every day, go home at the end of their 8-hour shift after having safely deployed, safely done their job, protected our nation, done the best that they could to keep the ideology of America alive. In protecting our country, we also partner up, of course, with Canada, RCMP, CBSA, some of the best partners that we have. In Mexico, we have tremendous capabilities and alliances with them also. So we protect our country, our neighbors, our borders. The volume of trade between Canada and the United States, Mexico and the United States are 1 and 2 for our trading partners throughout the world. Over $4.8 trillion worth of trade that's happening every year between our countries. Success is better quality of life, not only for our country in its entirety, but especially also for those borders that are being exploited or attempted to be exploited by the bad characters.
How about yourself, Jehan?
Success for Dejero means that we're able to achieve our mission and vision of providing reliable connectivity and enabling our customers' mission to its maximum potential. That is success to us, right? So we want to be part of delivering our customer, our partner's success. We have the opportunity of a lifetime to deliver this capability and make a real difference in the lives of people, right, on both sides of the line. I think that's very, very important. So it's very important to kind of have a long-term view on what are we enabling today? How does that fit into the customer's requirement into the future? And what are we doing to equip not just ourselves today, but the future generations and the ones that are going to come after us to kind of take over this and develop it further, right? So for me, it's almost like an evolutionary thing, right? There's success today, tomorrow, and then into the future.
Thanks so much to you both, David and Jehan, for joining me for this enlightening and important conversation.
Evie, great to have been with you this afternoon. Great discussion. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks again, Evie, for the opportunity. Always great chatting with Chief. And yeah, we look forward to having more discussions like this. It was awesome. Thank you.
To learn more about Dejero's mission-critical solutions for the public safety and defense sectors, or to book a demo, head to dejero.com.